more than one country store philosopher has called advice what everybody gives and what nobody takes. Tremendous skill is required to give effective advice, especially when it involves correction. One magazine once called this skill the art of reproving. Giving somebody a piece of your mind or telling him off is the quickest and perhaps the easiest way of offering correction. Yet the objective of making a person understand his fault and set it right is entirely missed. There is a way to tell someone he's wrong and show him what's right without offending him. Learning this art of reproving requires more knowledge than one might think.
So what happened next, Dave?
Well, we discovered we only had one oven that would work, and we had 2,000 tarts to cook before the morning.
Oh, my.
Whatever for?
Well, it was part of a meal we had to prepare for a 3-day convention we were attending.
Oh.
Anyway, there we were. It was 9 o'clock at night. We had one stove and 2,000 lumps of dough and a huge pot full of pie filling to keep us company.
Well, how'd you finally solve your problem, Dave?
Well, at the last minute, Pete Harper discovered the gas line to the other ovens had been turned off. We were all so tired that nobody even thought about checking the gas line.
Oh, Dave, that's like my trying to make my little lamp turn on without plugging it in.
Wait a minute. I know Pete Harper. He doesn't know anything about cooking.
Oh, neither do I. But it was only a matter of putting the filling in the crust and the pans in the oven. So, anyway, that's all we did, and by 11 we
Now,
had...
Dave, I'm sure Pete Harper couldn't have done anything like that.
Maybe it's possible Pete could have some hidden talent you didn't know about, Sue.
Sure, he's really pretty smart, you know.
Oh, I'm not saying he's not smart, but I think Dave probably means somebody else.
Well, as far as I know, Pete Harper was there. I don't think he has a twin.
Well, I'm sure it's nothing to take too much issue on. The important thing is Dave got his problem solved. The tarts were baked.
We all ate some of them the next day.
And were they ever good?
Well, I just don't want Dave to look foolish, that's all. There's no harm in that. Anyway, I've got to get going. Thanks so much for loaning me that dress pattern, Fran.
I'm glad to, Sue. It's just a good thing we both wear the same size.
Sure is. So I'll see you folks. I'd better get home before Jim wonders where I am. So long.
Bye.
We'll be seeing you
So
now.
long, Sue.
So long. Mom, what you do with a roast chicken demands at least a second helping. Thanks, Mom. This is really fantastic. But, you know, Dad, to get to something more serious,
Yes, Dave?
what was bothering Sue Lang this afternoon?
Well, how do you mean?
When she dropped by to borrow that pattern from Mom, and I was talking about my experience in the convention's kitchen,
Yes?
well, I knew what I was talking about. I don't see why she was so worried about whether Pete Harper could cook or not.
Yes, Daddy. I mean, after all, Dave was there. Mrs. Lang wasn't.
Well, Dave, I don't think she means any harm. It's just that she doesn't exactly know how to give advice or correct people. There's a real art to that.
Say, Joe, do you mind if we adjourn to the living room? I see a conference coming on, and Debbie and I want to get to the dishes.
Sure, why not? Come on, Dave. Since we've got Friday night home this week and no kitchen
Let's
duty...
go to the living room. I see what you mean, Dad, but it's not very considerate, as far as I can see, to just go up to a person and tell him he's wrong.
All right, Dave, but just line that up with a statement in the Bible.
All right, where do I find it?
Well, somewhere in Hebrews. Let's see. Chapter 12, here at verse 5.
My son, do not belittle the discipline from Jehovah, neither give out when you are corrected by him. For whom Jehovah loves, he disciplines.
Well, if God corrects the ones he loves, what about us? What should be our reason for correcting?
You mean if we're really concerned about somebody, we'd want him to improve?
That's right. Once he can see where he may be going wrong, and then how to turn around, you know you've given effective advice or correction.
We are all finished with the dishes. Did Daddy solve the Sue Lang problem for you?
We weren't talking so much about that as just how you go about giving advice.
No, I think it's a good way to make enemies. I couldn't get Margie Briscoe to talk to me for a month after I told her she talked too much.
Wow, if you said it like that, no wonder.
But she does.
Now, there you have it. Dave favors saying nothing to avoid hurting somebody, and you favor telling them right off the bat.
And right over the head.
Remember, though, now the Bible said, whom Jehovah loves, he disciplines. Now, real concern for someone demands you help him out.
Well, how's that, Dad?
Well, what was the first thing necessary according to that scripture?
Well, love.
Right. You have to examine your own motives. Do you want to really help the person,
Or do you just want to put him down?
All right, then, Debbie. How would you feel if I told you you talk too much?
But I don't, Daddy.
I see. You try to imagine how you'd feel if somebody said the same thing to you.
Another thing, still, you have to have all the facts on hand before you try to correct someone. Now, Deb,
Yes, Daddy.
what if, in front of your whole class, I told you you talk too much?
Oh, Daddy, I'd be so mortified.
She'd probably blush for a week.
But you see how much more effective it is to talk to someone privately?
That is, if you really want to help them.
Still, Daddy, even if you want to help somebody and you know they've done something wrong and you talk to them in private and you have all the facts and you put yourself in their place, how should you start?
Well, that's a good question, Debbie. A long one, but it's a good one.
Oh, yes, it is, Dad, but how should you start?
Well, probably the best way is by commending the person first.
You mean tell them the things you like about them first?
Right, but really mean what you say.
Well, suppose you don't like anything about them.
Now, what did we say was your first motive for even bothering to talk to them?
I don't remember.
Oh, wasn't it? You had to be really concerned to help the person?
That's right.
So, if you wanted to really help someone, there has to be something you like about him. Besides, isn't it easier to have someone you like tell you you're wrong in a nice way than to be told off by somebody who really doesn't care about you?
How do you mean, Daddy?
Well, isn't it easier to have your mother or me speak to you than, say, someone else?
Yes, I guess so.
Well, why?
Well, it isn't really easy to take, Daddy, but
But,
I know you and Mom love me, and, well, that makes a difference.
So if somebody feels you're really interested in him, he takes it better.
exactly. Now, just put yourself in his place, then act accordingly.
Boy, you've really got to do a lot of thinking before you try to give somebody advice.
Well, if you want to have the person accept what you say, you have to think it out.
And so I shouldn't have told Margie Briscoe she talked too much.
Well, you might have been a little easier on her.
Boy, if she told me that, I don't know what I would have done.
Probably steamed for a week.
All right, everybody, how about some of Debbie's marble cake and ice cream?
Oh, Mom, I didn't mean to leave you by yourself to get all this ready.
Don't worry about it, Debbie. Did you two have a good talk with your father?
Boy, we sure did.
And David, did your problem with Sue Lang get settled?
Oh, I'd forgotten all about that.
Well, that's one of the best ways of handling a little problem, Dave, forgetting it.
Well, let's have some of the dessert now.
Okay.
So then in the middle of all this, Sue came in and was wondering what the soap suds were doing all over the living room floor. And there I was in the armchair with the vacuum cleaner.
Excuse me, honey, but I remember it very clearly. You were on the sofa.
Oh, darling, it was the armchair, I'm sure. So there I was in the
Jim,
armchair.
Please don't spoil your story, dear. You know it was the sofa. It had to be.
Well, call it what you like. But I was sitting on it desperately trying to clean up the suds before the kids got home. It was just one of those days.
It must have been, Jim. You couldn't even tell what you were sitting on.
One thing for sure, at least he was sitting.
Right.
That's not fair. You shouldn't penalize Jim for a little mistake like that.
Are you sure it was his mistake?
Veronica, what are you trying to say?
Nothing, just asking a question, that's all.
Well, after all, Sue, Veronica's not the one worried about the sofa.
Well, it's not important anyway, Sue. Besides, it's about time we went home. It's getting late. We'll be seeing you, everyone.
I don't understand. It's still early and I was having a good time. Jim, something's the matter, isn't it?
As a matter of fact, honey, I just don't know why you can't learn when to keep your mouth shut and when to open it.
Me? Why, Jim. Oh, you mean your story. I didn't want you telling it the wrong way, that's all.
Sue, who, pray tell, would know whether it was right or wrong? It was just a story.
But it's the principle of the thing. You can't go around saying something that's not so.
But, honey, a sofa or an armchair, what difference does it really make?
It's being truthful.
All right. Even if it does make a difference, in front of 20 people is not the time or the place to make it into such a big deal.
Oh, Jim, don't be that way. Jim, I only did it for your own good. Just appreciate that.
Next time, let me take care of my own good by myself.
Hello, Sue. Won't you come in?
Thank you, Fran. I brought your pattern back.
How'd it work out for you?
The dress was really beautiful. I wore it last night to a dinner party with Jim.
I'm happy for you. Did you have a good time?
I did, but somehow Jim seemed to get all upset just for nothing.
He did?
That's part of why I wanted to see you, Fran. You helped me out before, and I thought...
Well, if you feel like talking, go ahead.
Well, Jim was telling a funny little story about something that happened around the house, and he made some foolish little mistake.
Yes?
I didn't want him to look funny, so I told him, and when he insisted on doing it his way, I tried again, and he got upset. I don't know what to do.
Well, sometimes it is pretty hard, I know. But still, Sue, I have to say there's something I really admire in you.
You do?
Yes,
In me?
Yes. You really do love your husband and you want to make him happy.
But that's why I'm so unhappy now. I try so hard to make him always look good, and everything seems to fail.
Well, maybe you might try to think the same way Jim is thinking right now.
How so?
Well, say you're telling a story, and you have the attention of everyone in the room. They're all enjoying it.
That was Jim last night.
And then your own husband interrupts you in front of all those people and says you're wrong.
Well,
Well, imagine what's happened to the importance of what you were saying.
I guess I'd look kind of foolish, huh?
Well, you might imagine how Jim felt last night.
But he was wrong, Fran.
Wrong about what?
About... Why, I don't even remember now.
Well, if it were serious enough, don't you think you could have told him later and privately?
I guess you're right. It probably would have been a lot easier on both of us.
In fact, it would probably help things all along the line if you just try to put yourself entirely in Jim's place when you talk to him.
Maybe, Fran. I think I even did the same thing to poor Dave when I was here last time.
Oh, I wouldn't worry. I think he's forgotten all about it.
Just the same, I think I'd better apologize. And I'd better start with Jim.
Well, that's a fine idea, Sue.
Anyway, thanks for the pattern, Fran, and for the advice.
Well, I'm always glad to help if I can.
Now I'd better get running.
Mom, I just overheard you talking to Mrs. Lang. You must have been listening to what Daddy said Friday night about giving advice.
You shouldn't eavesdrop, Debbie.
I know, Mom, but I was just working here in the kitchen and I couldn't help it. Besides, you did everything Dad said.
I did?
Yes, you commended her. You wanted to help her. You spoke privately and kindly. And you even put yourself in her place.
Well, I didn't know I was doing all that.
You didn't? What did you think you were doing?
Well, just following some good practical advice of the Bible about being concerned for people.
It is not easy to take or to give counsel. It is necessary, though. The ability to project oneself into another's place and give him counsel with genuine, unselfish interest and effectiveness is truly an art.
The program, All Scripture is Beneficial, is produced by the Watchtower Society and presented by Jehovah's Witnesses.